All right, Nana and Grampi, thank you for joining us today.
Our pleasure.
Peter and I thought it would be a lovely idea to interview you guys and hear from you some memories and some wisdom. So our first question for you, or our first prompt, is please describe in detail vivid or favorite memories from childhood. I'll pass it to you and you can decide who goes first.
You want to go first, Paula?
Yeah.
Okay. My most vivid memory from childhood is the first day of summer vacation from school. That's always been my favorite day. And people ask me now when I'm retired, how are you enjoying retirement? What is it like? And I tell them, do you remember the first day of summer vacation when you were 8 years old? I said, retirement is like that kind of a day every day. Now, it turns out I had a very, very happy childhood growing up in Brooklyn. My mother and father both worked. My grandmother ran the household, but you didn't need any public transportation to do whatever you wanted to do in the summer. And we had so many options open to us. So I had and more important than that, I was surrounded by a lot of family and a lot of friends. And so my childhood was very, very happy. And that's the most vivid memory I have of when I was growing up. Paulette?
Oh, you want me to go next with the same? Okay. Oh, well, I have a lot of vivid memories of my childhood. Mostly, I think, enjoying the freedom that I had. I remember our first home in Hyattsville, Maryland, and that's where I grew up till I was about 10 or 11. And I remember being able to ride my bike in the streets and not really have to worry about anything and be, I guess, 7 years old, and I could go wherever I wanted. And I remember playing with my friends on the street and all the fun we used to have. I remember the school that I went to. In those days, it was St. Jerome's in Hyattsville. And actually, that is where one of Teddy's best friends, Mike, can't think of his last name, but he was a teacher there.
Mike Murray.
Right, Mike Murray, and he was a teacher there. So it's kind of fun to see that, how things, it's a small world and things come around in circles. I remember when we moved to the house that I stayed in until I got married, and that was in Bethesda, Maryland, and enjoying the same freedoms. I remember going trick-or-treating as a kid with my friends, and how people would invite you into their homes to have apple cider and donuts while you're trick-or-treating, and you never worried about your safety or anything in those days. I mean, everybody was good to each other and looked out for each other, and it was really a very idyllic. What's the word I want to say? I'm not saying it right.
Childhood.
Yes, childhood. Idyllic childhood, because we could go off on our bikes. I used to ride my bike to school every day, and the school was about 1.5 miles away, and I used to have to cross Old Georgetown Road, which in those days was a 2-lane highway. Now it's 6 lanes, but it was still, you had to be careful. And it was just like, I can't imagine a better childhood. Being an only child, I didn't have siblings, but I did have a lot of friends. And of course, I was very close to my parents. And I just remember our holidays and going on vacations with them, and going up to visit all our relatives in Connecticut in the summertime. And it was a very happy childhood. And I'm very grateful that I was able to experience that.
some additional memories I had was my senior year at Georgetown. That was a great year. I mean, I had gone to Brooklyn Friends School in high school, and that changed the trajectory of my entire life because that was such a great school. It prepared me in every way possible to go to college. So I went to college with the intention of taking pre-med and getting into medical school. So it's important that I did well. Well, after I was at Georgetown for a while, I realized I could do this and I could do well. So I worked very hard first 3 years. And I got into medical school early in my senior year. And then my senior year was just an incredible year. One of the important things is that's when I met Paulette, our senior year. And it was the first year any students could live off campus, so we decided not to, my friends and I decided not to rent an apartment. We rented a house, and it was a brand new house in Virginia. And we had 7 guys, and one of the guys, Tony Rizzi, would only stay with us if we allowed him to do the cooking every night. And he came from a family of cooks. I remember our first night there. Our first night there, he made a special dessert, baked Alaskan, which I'd never had before.
Baked Alaska.
And I remember announcing to my friends also after we were there about 10 days and we always had dinner together every night. And I said, look, I don't care what you do in life, how successful you are, how much money you make, you will never have it this good again. We have our own house. Most of us already got into medical school. You have your own car. We have jobs at the university where we make extra money. We have girlfriends, and we don't have any responsibilities. This will never happen again. And at our 25th reunion, 2 of my roommates came up to me and said, we remember what you said, and you were right. You were right. So that was also very, very good time, very happy memories.
Which friend had the Apple truck?
Right. That was how we moved in. And then I had the good fortune of being on the social committee. And we would plan all the social activities for the year at Georgetown, which was a all-male school, with the 7 sister schools that were all girls' schools. And guess who was at this first meeting? This beautiful girl who was perky, and her name was Paulette. And that's where I met Paulette, and she really caught my eye. And she caught it a couple of times. She volunteered to help decorate the gym for the big dance we had, the rat race. So she said, oh yeah, I'll help decorate. She comes to the gym to decorate. She's got 4-inch heels on. This is my type of girl. So it was a great year. It was just a great year.
Okay. Ready for the next question?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
All right. The next question is, what is the biggest challenge you faced in your 20s or 30s, and how did you overcome it?
Okay, we faced substantial challenges unbeknownst to us because I graduated Georgetown at 21 barely, and Paulette was 19, and in order to stay together, we decided to get married because I was coming back to New York to go to medical school. And unbeknownst to us, we were going to have 3 children while we were in medical school. That
You're stealing my thunder.
What?
You're stealing my thunder.
Well, no, it's a different challenge. We had. I'm going to get to that. So we had 3 children. That was the class record. Nobody else had 3 children while in medical school, and so we faced substantial challenges. But I have to tell you, the challenges were more for Paulette than it was for me, because I was doing what I knew I was going to do and what I had set out to do my whole life: go to medical school, become a doctor. And I had heard a number of times from my father, your mother and I are working very hard to provide you with this education. Make sure you pay attention. And I always heard that in the back of my head. So I was very committed to my medical school, succeeding in medical school. And while Paulette was not in the same comfort zone I was, Paulette had been transported from Bethesda, Maryland to Brooklyn, New York. It was like taking her to the moon. That's how different it was. And with all that, she had to care for one child, two child, three children, okay? And probably my biggest failing was that I wasn't mature enough to know to devote some, or if not more, of my effort to Paulette, because I was so committed. I mean, I thought I was doing what I have to do. I was 100% committed to becoming a doctor. I should have been maybe 60% committed and 40% committed to participating as a father and a husband. But I thought, Paulette always said to me, all I ever wanted to be in life was a wife and a mother. So, well, here she is, but that was not her comfort zone, and I could see that now, and so that represented, quite a challenge to us, working our way through that, and the difficulties that created, and but with the good Lord's help, we got through that. Not easily, but we got through it, and then we were rewarded by having the best family.
So challenges in our 20s and 30s. Well, Grampi just kind of synopsized the gist of it. He's right. By the time I was 22, I had 3 children. So I had my hands full. And we didn't have anybody to help us because my parents were in Bethesda and his parents worked. So it was a handful. And I guess I just was so involved in raising my children and keeping a house and running a house and doing all the things that are expected of a mother and a wife that I didn't think of anything else except that we were working towards a goal. So you knew, even though at times things were hard, I mean, it seems like whenever the kids would get very sick and run fevers, he was always on call at the hospital. So I'd have to figure it out myself. Sometimes I call him, what do I do? Anthony's got 103, 104, and he'd tell me what to do and I'd do it. And, I mean, you lived life minute to minute and you just did what you had to do and you did the best you could. And that's how I thought about it at that time. It's like any other goals that I might have had in the back of my head just kind of, that's where they stayed. I think, so the 20s were really, I think, difficult for me because I was so busy and I just couldn't think of anything else. Sometimes I was a little bit upset with your grandfather because it was lonely. Especially when he had time off because he wanted to do something for himself that relaxed, but I kind of needed a little respite. But
yeah, that was
not good.
No, I come home, I want to watch the Dodgers or the Mets or whoever was playing at that time, and she wanted me to spend some time with her, and I didn't fully appreciate that, and it took me a long time to appreciate that, but it's part of getting older and more mature and developing in life, I mean, you're not born with all of this knowledge and all this wisdom. You kind of have to, and what happens is people break up because while they're figuring all this out, it's too much for them to stick together and figure it out. They decide it'd be easier just to split up and start over. We never really kind of thought of that, okay? Nobody in my family had ever been divorced. And I think the same applied to Paulette. So divorce was a foreign thought. And no matter what difficulty we had, we always knew deep down that we loved each other. We also knew that if we kept working and sticking it out, that things were going to get better. Things were going to get better. And they got a lot better. And they got better beyond our wildest dream.
Right. So then in the 30s, you know, your father, your uncle, and aunt, they were now middle school, and you were finishing 6th grade by the time we moved to Scotch Plains. And, you know, things really were getting easier because I didn't have babies to deal with anymore. But I do have teens now. But I have to thank God for that. They were pretty good in their teens. They didn't give us too much trouble at all.
Who gave you the most trouble?
The most, I'd say Anthony. He was a little bit of a rebellious guy. Oh, Sabina too. I can't forget Sabina. Sabina and Anthony gave me a few gray hairs, but your father was great. He was a good kid. He gave me agita growing up as a kid, but by the time he got to high school, he kind of like found his niche, and he was a good kid, straight arrow.
You know, Sabina and Anthony are going to watch this.
Okay. Well, they know what they did. So, I mean, it wasn't the worst things in the world, and we did have our talks about things. But, I mean, you know, they were typical teenagers, and they were going to test their boundaries. And but thank God they were good kids, and they listened to their parents, you know. In the long run, they listened to their parents. So
One of the most bizarre things that Anthony did, which I'll never forget,
oh gosh,
is
no.
he was out late one night, and for some reason he didn't want to ring the doorbell.
No, he couldn't get it. He couldn't. He was out. He was past curfew.
Past his curfew. So what does he do? He comes home in Scotch Plains, and he climbs up the cornerstones of the house onto the roof, and
Outside of Sabina's bedroom.
outside of Sabina's bedroom, starts knocking on Sabina's window. Sabina's wondering what is going on. She's asleep,
She scared her half to death.
and he got in through her window. And if you see, I mean, that he was able to climb up the side of that wall, it would have really been easier just to ring the bell. You know, and that was.
I think he
bizarre.
was afraid
That
of
was bizarre.
being grounded for a month or something like that. So
How did
it was.
you find out about that?
How did we find out about
Sabina
that?
finally eventually told.
Yeah, we didn't find out about it, and it's funny because I usually waited up till everybody was home. But I guess for that particular evening, I just was tired and I went to bed, and so that's the reason why I didn't catch them. So they covered for each other, and you know, found out about it a few years later after it was way too late to do something about it.
But you know, in the great scheme of things, if that's the worst we could say that they did, that's pretty good.
Well, I mean curfews and a few other little things, but major, minor,
serious.
nothing serious, and they all know what they've done, and so I'm not gonna spell it out for them. But
So the 20s and 30s were very challenging for the reasons we've mentioned, and I think the way we got through it is just by persevering. Okay, we knew we loved each other. We knew it was going to get better. We forgave each other for, you know, things, how we slighted each other at times, and in retrospect, that was key, and we got rewarded for that, for doing that.
yeah, forgiveness is a very important part of your life, and if more people could forgive each other, I mean, we're all human. We're all going to fail, but it's looking to our Lord and how He forgave everybody and reconciled us to God the Father. If we can't forgive others, then, you know, that doesn't say that that's not very good for us, because God, who is all good and love, forgives us. So who are we not to forgive? But other than that, it was funny because we in the 30s now we moved to Scotch Plains, a beautiful now big home, and it was like our dream place, and we were very very happy. All kids were settled, and then later, approaching before I reached 38, Aunt Sabina was a senior in high school and going to be going off to college, and I found out we were going to have another little child, Aunt Cecile. So here I thought everyone's going off, now I can do my own thing. God had other plans. So, but one of the wonderful benefits about having Cecile later in life was it kept us young, and it was wonderful. Your grandfather got to enjoy being a father for the first time.
For the first time, I saw one of my kids grow up.
Yeah.
Because for the first three, I was so busy in medical school and growing up on my own that I didn't participate in their growing up. I really didn't. But by the time I knew it, they were all 12 and 13. It was different for Cecile because I was able to
Right.
participate.
He changed her diaper, gave her night bottles. It was, woke up to give her a 6 a.m. bottle. I mean, he never could do that with the others, so it was fun, right?
It was. It was.
Wow. Wonderful. And our final question for today, although I see us maybe doing this again at some point, is what is advice you would give your younger adult self?
Okay.
What I would give advice I'd give my younger adult self is not to be quite as focused as I was on becoming a doctor, but to consider other people in my life and how they also may have needed me, and be less chauvinistic than how I was brought up. I mean, I was brought up, that the man does the job, he goes to work, he provides for his family, and the wife takes care of everything else. Well, it doesn't work that way when you're in your mid or late 20s and your wife has 3 kids and she's only 27 and you're in medical school. So you have to have a sense of the big picture. And that's hard to do when you're at that age, when you're 27, 28, and you're worried about your future and how you're going to achieve what you're trying to achieve. And I mean, both of us worked very hard at what we were trying to do. And sometimes you work so hard, you kind of miss the big picture. But working hard is not bad. I remember my junior high school principal told me, I don't know how we happened to have this discussion, and he said the most important thing in life is having balance. And I said, what do you mean by that? He said, well, you need to devote a certain amount of time to yourself. You need to devote a certain amount of time to your wife and family and your education and future. And you can't devote all of your time to just one of those things. You need to devote some time to each of those things to have a balanced life. Now, unfortunately, I was only 16 years old when he told me that. I wasn't too sure what that meant. But later on in life, in my own mind, I realized what he was talking about.
Okay. That's kind of a hard question to answer. Because sometimes when you're that young, you're just kind of working and fighting to just stay focused on what you want to do, or what is before you. What are your obligations and responsibilities? And I would say to my younger self that to fulfill your responsibilities and duties should be your utmost goal. Um, and sometimes don't take yourself too seriously at that age because I think sometimes in your 20s and 30s you do tend to maybe focus in on yourself a little bit too much. So I think you have to try to look at yourself in relationship to the people around you and what their needs are. Um, and if they're close to you, if they're family or close friends, you want to be there for them and help, you know, rather than just thinking, well, what do I get out of this, or what do I need? You know, my needs supersede somebody else's needs, because that's not um, that's not really where we should be. I think as we mature and get older, you tend to realize that. Uh, so maybe that's something that my 20 or 30-year-old self would wish that I could understand and realize that more instead of learning by trial and error. But then maybe sometimes trial and error is the way when you do things like that, you make mistakes, but you learn from your mistakes. Those are lessons that are usually you can stay with you forever. So I would just say try to take each minute as it comes and try to enjoy life the best you can, because we're only given one life to live.
I think that the 20s and the 30s for anyone are difficult times because you're evolving emotionally, intellectually, with relationships. And we complicated that process tremendously by getting married young, having 3 children. So we introduced into that normal process of evolution some difficult challenges. Okay, so one of the suggestions I would have is that people should get married maybe later, have children later, as most people do. Okay, but the other thing you also learn is that life doesn't always go as you planned it, okay? No matter how carefully you plan, that things are going to happen that you weren't counting on.
Mm-hmm.
And being happy sometimes is determined by how you deal with the situations that come to pass,
Right.
that influence your life, that you weren't expecting, and how you deal with them. And I can say that we never turned our back on each other when a difficult situation came up, but we always tried to work our way through it and never even thought of throwing in the towel, as many young people do now. They throw in the towel prematurely, you know. So you have to be prepared for the unusual thing that life brings to you, and be prepared to deal with it.
Yeah, and in line with that, when you do get married, you take a vow, and you have to honor that commitment. And in your vow, you say, "In sickness and in health, till death do you part." So if times get bad, you're supposed to trudge through them, but do it together. As try to unite together as much as you can. And if there's difference between spouses, then you try to work that out. I think one of the prime examples for us was our parents. I mean, my mother and father and my in-laws, they made commitments, they had vows, and they honored them. And
Correct.
it's not you know today you see, and it's so sad, you see families, well, with this modern world, you grow up, you move away, whereas the families used to stick together, all live in the same community or neighborhoods and stuff like that. So you had an integral family unit, just not the immediate family, but you had your aunts and uncles and cousins and grandparents, and everybody was there to support you and help you grow. Um, Andrew was fortunate to have that. I wasn't, because my parents had to move away from their homes because circumstances with World War II and the Depression and all that. So they lived away from their family and only got to see them 2 weeks a year. So we didn't have that. But yet I saw within my parents how dedicated they were to each other and to me. So I think that's something that in your 20s and 30s, even if you do get married young, although most people don't anymore, but you have to realize you've made a vow. So take it seriously. And I think,
Work it out.
yeah, work it out, right? That's it.
Wow.
Thank you very much for
Thank you, guys.
made us think a little bit.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many other stories that we could go into, or maybe some at a later date. But
we'll do more of these. These are
yeah,
fun
this is fun.
and I think a bigger project. And
Okay,
I got some more questions that I think would be fun for another time.
wonderful.
And we appreciate your insight into your life and the lessons that you've learned and willing to share for us as a family and our families going forward.
Well, in 1 month, on today's February 15th, 2026, and in March 17th, 2026, Grampi and I will be married 64 years.
Wow.
So it kind of tells you there is perseverance and it can work. There were a few times I wanted
They
to pat
said
him
it
on the
couldn't
head.
be done.
Okay, thank you.
Awesome.
Nice.